All right, so we are entering part 3 of this 3-hour tour, and that is focusing in on our other partnership in the realm of law. And for those of you who are just joining us, we're going to spin you back to the beginning here and give you a proper welcome. Bernie?
Yeah, again, Bernie Reilly from Center for Research Libraries. We're webcasting from the Linda Hall Library of Science, Engineering, Technology in Kansas City. We'll need the next slide here. Yeah, we're calling this Leviathan update because we kind of like that term. We used it, we invented it or adopted it more accurately for the Collections Forum that we held last April at this time. Which was a face-to-face collection forum, and that was in Chicago. At that forum, we looked at the next slide. We looked at the challenges of dealing with. This section is going to be about a number of things having to do with government information. It will be the Leviathan Strategic Framework and the status of e-government preservation, specifically focusing on FedSys, the GPO document repository, an update on our Global Resources Law partnership with some of the exciting things that we've been doing there, and our work in digitizing endangered foreign government publications. Okay, so Leviathan, we focused at Leviathan on the challenges of specifically born digital government information and records, born digital government or electronic government communications, electronic publications of government agencies, the electronic records of government the agencies and government departments, and something that's this whole topic has been given a new life by Hillary Clinton's email, the Hillary Clinton email controversy that revealed the complications of when government officers, government officials use electronic resources for official communications, that kind of thing. We came out of that Leviathan, the 2-day forum, with what we call the Leviathan Strategic Framework. And this is what we think the most useful things for libraries to do in the age of e-government with regard, and what we think the most useful things for library to do to ensure the long-term accessibility and integrity of government information and government records. And that's a long way of saying, how do we preserve government information in the digital age? We came up with a strategic framework. That framework included 5 different things, 5 all of which are related, that look very unlike what libraries have done in the past. In the ways we've had of dealing with government publications in the past in the U.S. we had the Federal Depository Library Program, and in Canada we had the government depository libraries. In the U.K. there's the government depository libraries as well. Those kinds of things. That was a whole apparatus that was set up to preserve print and microform, not digital. Obviously there's exceptions. I mean, there are CD-ROMs that are preserved in the Federal Depository Library Program. There's talk recently about electronic deposit but largely the FDLP in the U.S. is set up as a print and microform and microfiche repositories. We also, in the area of government records, namely the records, the internal records and communications that government agencies produce as part of their business, part of the work they do. We had the National Archives and Records Administration in the U.S. We had the Library and Archives Canada in Canada, and there's the National Archives in the U.K. as well, and many national archives around the world. Those are all set up primarily to deal with print and analog hard copy records. All those organizations have taken great steps towards developing the capability to preserve electronic records, but it's just not there yet, obviously. So what are the 5 points of the Leviathan Strategic Framework? First, identify what's most at risk, triage. There's really way too much out there for us to think that we could, we meaning CRL, we meaning the research libraries community, CRL and the research libraries community could manage and preserve. There's just far too much. We're dealing with an economy of surplus rather than an economy of scarcity, and so things have really changed. So we have to decide what's at risk. What CRL has carved out as its own area of concentration are materials from governments that are not being taken care of, where things are not being taken care of. So U.S. federal government publications we're not too worried about. We don't see the point in our starting to collect federal government publications in digital form. We're more interested and more concerned about state-level publications, and we think that the number of the states have gone digital only much sooner than the federal government agencies have, and so we think there's a lot there at risk. Also, publications produced by governments in unstable areas, in conflict areas, and also governments that are likely to suppress access to government information, government publications. So we've done a lot of work there. That's mostly our big field. Second point, drill down. What systems are there and how well do they work? We need to know more about the efforts that our national organizations, our federal or government organizations are, with the things that they're doing to preserve and address the challenge of preservation, accessibility, and integrity of electronic records and publications. We really don't know enough about these systems. There are systems that have been developed by the Library and Archives Canada and by National Archives and Records Administration and by TPO that are extremely large, extremely complex, and extremely costly. There's a lot riding on them, and we really would like to know more. We think it's important to know more about how they work, to understand how they work, to be able to then determine what our role as libraries is going to be in backing those things up. Differentiate, what do users need and how does this differ from one field to another? We're facing a whole new set of practices in the research community, in the public policy community, in the historians, the community of historians, in the community of cultural studies, in the community, in the financial and business schools. I don't think there's going to be a one-size-fits-all solution for them. So we have to get a better understanding of what they do and how they do it. And next, collectivize. There are a lot of commercial organizations like ProQuest, like Bloomberg, like Westlaw, and others that are in the business of distributing government information and government publications and even government records. These are the venues through which many people, in fact, probably most people, have access to government information. We need to get a better sense of how they're doing what they're doing, and we need to get some leverage with them to get them to do the right things. And so we need to get that influence with them, we need collective weight, and we need to be on the same page. All of our libraries need to be on the same page about what we need from them. So that means licensing those databases collectively. That means critiquing those databases and analyzing them and assessing them. That means understanding, figuring out the overlap between what's in the proprietary databases and what's in the open access databases. And then act up. We need to work with like-minded partners outside the library world. There's a lot of organizations out there now, far more organizations now than used to be, that are forcing governments to give up or to reveal and disclose information, documents, records, and that. WikiLeaks is only one of them. There are organizations like Transparency International, the National Security Archive based at George Washington University, and others. And those organizations are taking very different approaches to forcing disclosure and forcing revelations or exposure of government-produced information. So we think alliances with those organizations would certainly be in order. Okay, one of the concrete things that we're doing this year is evaluating FedSys, the federal government, the U.S. federal government document repository. FedSys was set up to be a comprehensive repository of digital government publications. The architecture of it is not very well known. We think it'd be good to know more about the architecture of it. But we thought we would take a better look at FedSys this year in general. We think there's a lot riding on it. Being a comprehensive repository of U.S. government publications and information is a big deal. It's a big aspiration. We think it'd be good to know more about how they're doing it and how it's going and how long it's going to take for it to be comprehensive and that kind of thing. So we did a survey. Thank you to those of you who did respond to the survey. We got some very good information about it. Some of the questions, the reason we did the survey was to find out what you wonder about with regard to FedSys. Are there things keeping you up at night in thinking about FedSys as being the main framework for long-term preservation of digital government publications? And so we threw out a few questions to give us a sense, just to see how you would all react to that. The results of the survey are on the screen. What was rated most important, or more important by more people, was how many agencies are now represented in FedSys. And these are print documents. Sorry, we'll get to the digital later. But a lot of the digitized content, or a lot of government publications, are being digitized and put into FedSys. So most people were most interested in how many agencies are represented, how many agencies are represented in FedSys. Essentially, how comprehensive is it? How the priorities are decided was another big question. I don't know. We really don't know. But I think that's an extremely important question. Who does decide? Who's the decider? And how does that decider decide? And who decides how that decider decides? And so forth. It's not at all clear what the schedule is for populating FedSys with the federal government documents, so that a lot of people, a somewhat lesser number of people, were interested in how rapidly the print is being digitized, and I think we need better metrics on that. It's not completely clear by looking at FedSys what's there and how fast it's being populated. So on the born digital content, more people wanted to know about what percentage of the born digital publications are now in FedSys. Again, how quickly it's being populated and and how many agencies are now included in it and when it will be comprehensive. So the main interests of people are in scope. So we'll take that into account when we look at FedSys this year. We've done a very brief workup on FedSys in the eDesiderata database, or the platform, which James Simon showed you a little bit earlier during the news, the session on news licensing, that kind of thing. And so that's where we'll put that information. The next data we got from you was what other aspects of FedSys are important to you? How are withdrawal decisions made are the big thing. This comes probably from our experience with the historical withdrawal of government publications from depository libraries in the past, and also how are those withdrawals disclosed, how evident is become when something's withdrawn from the repository. What was of less interest to people is that column on the far right on how the digital signature process works. The way we took it was that people are less interested in kind of the assurances of authenticity of the content in FedSys, and I'm not sure that meant how well how much of that applied to the print versus the digital. With print, digital, or authenticity, digital signature is probably not going to be that hard to determine, or the authenticity of a document is probably not going to be that hard to determine. Digital is different, though. Digital things are much easier to change, and so there's much more potential for altering a document, that kind of thing. Also, the digital signature has to hold up in court when these things are brought in as evidence, and so I think that's maybe something we want to think a little bit more about. Anyhow, we put some of this information in the FedSys review in the Desiderata platform. And the Desiderata, again, is not just commercial database, but it's open access databases as well. And I think we want to evaluate this as it's kind of something that's very similar along the lines of a commercial database. So I want to take a minute now for questions. Do we have any questions that have come in? Nothing's come in over the chat. Let's open it up to see if somebody wants to speak up.
Did receive a question about the Leviathan strategy, or rather CRL strategy as part of Leviathan, and this was asking about more information about plans for covering state government information. I will be talking about this briefly in the next session, but I think that this is part of that discussion that I think we need to have further engagement, both with the law libraries, the GovDocs librarians who are responsible for collecting this material. Is where are the areas that are falling in between the cracks? I mean, we've discovered a lot of historical material that has not been digitized, but in the born digital world, there seems to be a great variety from state to state what is being captured by the various repositories, and who's doing well, and sharing some of that information among our members would be useful. But I will talk a bit about some of our approaches to this.
Someone asked, is this a study of FedSys or an attempt to gather all its content into CRL vaults? We're really not interested in gathering its content into CRL vaults. I think we would really like to be able to rely on FedSys as an open government repository. I think that's the ideal, and that's really what we need now. Having a second repository, particularly a digital repository of it at CRL is not what we'd like to do. We also we are intentionally, we being CRL, are intentionally staying away from or staying out of the digitization of federal government documents, except for federal government technical reports, which are being digitized systematically under the Trail program, which is working under the umbrella of CRL. There are a number of other major organizations and efforts that are focused on digitizing federal government documents, including the CIC and HathiTrust cooperation or program to digitize federal government documents. So we really don't want to, we really don't want to be redundant on this. And even though redundancy is a good thing in the digital realm, I think that that kind of effort is going to take major resources. So we're happy to let the people that put a stake in the ground take the lead on that. So this is an analytical study. Someone asked if this is just an analytical study of FedSys. It is, but it's an analytical for the purpose of then deciding our agenda after that. If there are things that FedSys is not going to cover, it'd be good to know, and we can then frame our own strategies accordingly. So that's one question is, will CRL partner with HathiTrust to organize a framework for state documents? We might. It depends on the interest of HathiTrust. I think they've carved out quite a bit to do. CRL has preserved state government documents for some time. We have a very large collection of state government documents, and that goes up to the 1950s. We also are in the process of digitizing all of our state legislative journals. all the CRL state legislative journals and Canadian legislative journals. Our Canadian legislative journals, our entire holdings have been digitized now, but are available to all CRL libraries through the LMC digital platform. And James Simon will talk a little bit about that. We're also keeping the print, so in that respect, we've moved ahead already with state government documents.
It's my understanding too that HathiTrust, in organizing its own activities about the government documents and the digitization, is that they've been focused first and foremost on the federal level, and that they weren't really making inroads into the states. One of the meetings I heard about this, they said, "Oh my, you want us to do the states now as well? We can't even wrap our hands around the federal." So it's not to say that they can't or won't, but certainly, our approach to the states certainly would be done in consultation with whatever HathiTrust is looking at. But how to partner is another question, I guess.
Yeah, I think the problem is big enough, or the challenge is big enough, that it would take the combined efforts of HathiTrust and CRL to do it. One of the conversations we've had since we put out the survey was with GPO. What strategies would there be? I mean, what would CRL do besides this analysis or after this analysis? And one answer to that is advocacy. I mean, the GPO's staffing has been cut tremendously over the last several years. From they had a staff of 30,000 about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's way down. And they're looking at even more cuts in the upcoming federal budget. So the advocacy, I think, is an important role for us, and that was part of our Leviathan strategy, is ACT UP. And I think we have to. One challenge that GPO faces in populating FedSys is the fact that they're a legislative branch agency, so they don't have the authority to compel an executive branch agency to deposit their documents. They've been very successful getting documents from Congress, or federal government, congressional publications, but not with the agencies. It may be possible, and it may be wise, in fact, for us to work to help GPO get the support of the authority to compel agencies, or to be able to provide some kind of incentives to agencies to deposit their documents there. I think we would have to focus, again, the triage is one of those points of the strategic framework, and I think the area of focus there might be agencies where where the documents are really important, that where would be really important places to start, like the Commerce Department or the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. We really need to identify some targets there, because the willingness and ability of the agencies to cooperate with GPO is going to vary from one agency to the next. So there won't be a one-size-fits-all approach to this, it seems to me. So this is something we are very interested in exploring, and we would like to hear from you what agency documents for the GPO that you would really like to see in FedSys, what you think are most important to get in there. We mentioned, as I said, Commerce and EPA, maybe Defense Department might be another one, but in the interest of transparency. But we really do want to hear from you on that.
We have about 2 more minutes for questions. We have a few coming in. Let me just check to see if anybody has a hand raised for a voice question. I see a couple more on the chat. None on the voice. You're welcome to raise your hand in the WebEx demo if you're just joining us. In the participants tab, there's a hand raising thing. If you have a telephone or a voice over IP with a microphone. If you're just listening by speakers, we can't hear you. Okay, so there was a question about some of the granularity of this data, Bernie, and the question was, what about those kinds of data that get put into a database or something that is renewed constantly, or if it's updated and we lose that past information? Is this the kind of information that we can capture?
Yes, yeah, we absolutely. That's a major problem with databases. In the reason for that problem is a lot of these databases are marketed to organizations that are not libraries. And so that the organizations that have more interest in current information than they have in historical information. We think that the university research community has a very strong and growing interest in access to historical data, and so that's one area where we hope to get leverage with the commercial publishers and even the government agencies that publish direct to the web on providing longer-term access to historical materials. We think that the solution to that is not maybe to harvest from them, but I think more likely the solution is to get them to do it themselves. I mean, to do it on a more systematic basis, and also to disclose when materials have been withdrawn from access. That's something that's just not there. That kind of transparency is just not there right now.
We had a question about countries in conflict. We can address that in the next section, I think, Richard, so we're not ignoring things. There were a couple of responses about the issue of digital signature, I think, and the responses to the survey, since we were intrigued by that. One was questioning, somebody was questioning whether all of the electronic documents in FEDSYS have a digital signature. And another person commented that perhaps maybe this is already well understood, so it's perhaps that's why it's not of as much interest to the members. I don't know that we have an answer to that those issues right there, but those were just some comments I think that came through. I'm not sure that everything in FEDSYS has an electronic signature to it.
No, but it sounds like there is some information available from Godard and DLC on the authenticity, and that you can get a good understanding of how this works from them or from GPO.
There was a question about the copyright issues relating to state documents, and certainly that is it's a bit trickier than federal copyright rules, given that the different states may have different interpretations of copyright within their state laws. It's not automatically protected like federal works tend to be. That's a tricky question, but it's one that, at least from CRL's perspective, is not insurmountable.
Well, I think what they're alluding to is, James, that the number of state documents, there's copyright materials embedded in them, or they're published by third-party publishers.
Yeah, true enough.
So that is an issue, and I think we have to deal with that. One way that what we've digitized are materials that are pretty openly and obviously in the public domain, but material that is not obviously in the public domain, or not definitely in the public domain, could be made available behind a firewall that enables access for researchers only, and we have the capability at CRL.
This is great, and please keep your questions coming. We are going to move ahead just a little bit more. We're going to move ahead to the next section here, but we have time at the end as well for additional questions as they occur to you, or perhaps you were too afraid to raise your hand. We can call on you later.
Can I just do a little infomercial here? This is Bernie Reilly. There is a forum now been organized by the Canadian Association of Research Libraries that will take place on May 14th and 15th in Toronto, and that's they're calling it Leviathan North, but that is a forum that will look closely at Canadian, both provincial and national level electronic records and electronic information. So I recommend that. That should be a very good conversation.
Where can they find more information about that?
Go to the CARL website, Canadian Association of Research Libraries, CARL.
Good. So if your continuing interest in government documents extends to international issues and North American and Canadian materials, do think about that. Let me just introduce a new topic here at the next section of our presentation, which relates to our Global Resources Law Partnership. This session is broadly constructed to cover both law and government, being part and parcel of each other.
Sometimes they'll go together. Maybe not in Illinois.
Yeah. I'll leave that one alone. The Global Resources Law Partnership was constructed at the same time as we were forming our other global partnerships in the areas of science and of news, which makes it all a natural fit for today's discussion. Here I wanted to highlight just a couple of the aspects of the law partnership, and in particular the work that we've been doing with the Law Library Microform Consortium. As most of you know, I hope, we've brokered an arrangement with LLMC, much in the same way that we have with our other partners, that is working to arrange for access to a wide variety of material that extends CRL's own collecting capabilities and complements it, and provides access in a way that's similar or perhaps of equal benefit that you would get to collections held physically by CRL. So LLMC and CRL have been working together since 2010 to both digitize content relating to legal and government information and make accessible the huge corpus of material that LLMC already has in its possession. All told, LLMC has more than 53 million pages of content in the database LLMC Digital. That represents about 7,500 titles or 88,000 volumes, which is a pretty significant law collection. LLMC's principal purpose in making content available is to represent some of the widest held materials that law libraries have been under increasing pressure to disregard or move to remote storage or discard entirely. So they've been working for quite a while with law libraries in preserving the historical legal collection, which included both U.S. and to an extent international material. CRL's partnership with them significantly extended both the base of institutions that had access to this material, as well as the interests of those institutions in making a wider range of content available. So, very specifically, CRL has been working to exert some of its own interests and interests represented by its members and the advisory committee that was formed to help guide the partnership in prioritizing select content on top of what LLMC has been doing with its constituency. So to date, through the CRL partnership, the Law Library Microform Consortium has scanned about 15,000 volumes that either have come directly from CRL or have been sponsored by the CRL initiatives. That equates to about 10.4 million pages. So when I say that they, to date, have about 53 million pages online, 10 of those 53 have come part of the benefit of the CRL partnership with LLMC. So that is not an insignificant amount. So there's been a great benefit to us in terms of making content available from our vaults, but I think there's also a reciprocal benefit to the LLMC membership in terms of widening the base of the materials. LLMC Digital, as I mentioned, is available to all CRL libraries. The partnership extended the access beyond the core members of LLMC and the primary constituency, which is the law libraries, although campus access was usually campus-wide for existing LLMC members. So we've really extended the access to this material. And you know, the purpose of the partnership was not just to provide access, but it was to also preserve and make accessible the primary legal and government publications from U.S. and other jurisdictions. And let me just cover some of the collections that we've done to date with them. The team at LLMC has been fantastic. They've been really responsive to the partnership's priorities And when a member institution from CRL has requested something from them, they've put it to the top of the queue. So again, think of this as an asset and as an opportunity. If you have a scholar who's doing research with material that might be eligible for inclusion in LLNC Digital, by all means get in touch with us. Some of the materials that Bernie alluded to earlier on in the presentation about state documentation and the digitization of our legislative journals. I just wanted to give you an update on this project. Many of you may have heard in earlier presentations that we had been working on the Canadian legislative assembly material. The Canadian journals included the proceedings of the provinces and the territories, plus the elected sessional papers of the various legislative assemblies. It also included the journals, debates, and proceedings of the Parliament itself of Canada as well. So that included both the House of Commons and the Senate materials. You'll see here on the map, this is a representation of the states, provinces, or territories that we've covered to date through the LLNC partnership covering legislative journals. So there's still a bunch of U.S. states to go and a couple of Canadian provinces or territories to go, but we're making steady progress on this. So on the U.S. side, we've done 6,400 volumes of the U.S. state legislative journals. And again, these are the kind of the daily transactions of the various houses. The journals report on the daily actions of the House and Senate assemblies. It includes the proceedings, the records of votes, other legislative matters and motions that are made. So these differ to an extent from your transcripts of debates or perhaps a database of the laws themselves. This really helps fill in that picture. What was discussed on the floor? How did it move through the committees? Who voted on what? So what are the voting records? I mean, there's a tremendous text mining potential to this content. In addition to the kind of straight up record, they also contain a lot of the supplemental material that are submitted on the floor. So reports from the governor, reports from different committees and commissions, population studies, birth records, marriage records, all sorts of things that pass through the hands of these assemblies. So it's a wealth of material that is now accessible in digital format. And we were surprised at how much was previously not available. We prioritized kind of moving across the country from the west to east under the presumption that some of the East Coast material had already been scanned or perhaps was more voluminous because of the relative length of time that assemblies have been in order. But we're finding as we go state to state, much of this material is not available. We skipped over California because we heard that they were digitizing their materials from both the House and the Senate. And in fact, they've made page images available from the Senate. But it seems like they're not moving forward with further activity. So we're reconsidering going back to Cali to work on that. So fear not. And don't worry, Alberta, we're coming to get you. So anyway, that's kind of the state of this, and we think it's a big deal, and we'd like your feedback on how we get the rest done. CRL has about 14,000 journals, volumes, I should say, that we've estimated we have, so we're not quite halfway there, and although we've covered a wide portion of the territory, we kind of wanted to figure out where we should go next, how to prioritize our material. So we put this together in our member survey that we sent out, and here was the results of that survey. Again, it's perhaps who decided to answer, but so those from Illinois might have put Illinois on the top. Go Illinois! But for the most part, it looks like we've got some strong interest in some of the bigger states, the East Coast states, and who's getting short shrift are our smaller states up north, Rhode Island. But at any rate, we're looking to reorder our priorities in terms of how we're moving forward with this collection. Our intent is to make it all available eventually, but we wanted to make sure that the dollars that we allocated were spent on what was most interesting to you, So it's a judgment call. So we've actually put New York to the top of our queue for the next state in line to be digitized. So thank you for your feedback on this, and we'll continue to apprise you as we get more material done. Another collection that that Bernie mentioned both this morning at our annual council meeting, as well as by way of reference in our Leviathan strategy, is the providing access to materials from countries in conflict, countries where the record is endangered, I suppose is another way of putting it. In particular here, we've received a generous grant from the Carnegie Corporation of New York to prioritize and digitize material from countries that are generally perceived as corrupt and have a record of corruption or non-transparency. And we're starting our work with the scanning and digitization of the official gazettes of selected countries, both in Africa, North Africa, and the Middle East region. So part of the rationale for this program, is that these materials are often the foreign official gazettes are the print record of the laws being produced in various countries, and that these are often enshrined in the constitutions of the countries as a necessary part of laws to be enacted. But in many states, these materials are not widely accessible. They're not broadly accessible to the public. They are perhaps not transparently made available on the web, or the websites for technical issues or political issues are taken down. So this material, in fact, represents a lot of endangered material. CRL is working to digitize its print and microfilm holdings of the back issues of these foreign official gazettes, and we will also work our way forward to present times to harvest the born digital or the electronic versions of these materials that are being made accessible via the web. So in this manner, we're looking to create more broadly construed as an open web repository for civil society documentation. We're starting with the the foreign official gazettes of places that have been in the news, frankly, over the past several years. So places like Zimbabwe, Iraq, Iran, other countries in the region where this material was, it's just really not being made accessible through any other means. So we're kind of stepping in and making this part of our strategy of endangered material. So both with this material as well as the print journals that we're making available through LLMC, we're part of the partnership, of course, is creating the print archive, securing the long-lasting legacy of the print collection. So when we're scanning this material, we're not discarding the print. It's actually going into a preservation storage facility. Either some of the materials retained by CRL, some of it's being retained in the storage facilities of LLMC, which is really secured and long-term storage for this material. So there's a strong print archiving component to this digitization as well. Moving forward, again, the last question on our survey related to the foreign official gazettes and the work that we're doing with the Carnegie Corporation grant. And we sought to ask the question, well, given that we're taking on these 10 countries to start, what other material might be important to target for this material? So we looked at other countries where the print record or the record of distribution of the laws was not very transparent, and we put a bunch up for the questions. And I was rather surprised at the absolute flat line level of interest here of all of it being important. You can see the questions never really dipped below the middle, number 3 mark on our survey of importance. What this tells me was, in particular, that this material is important at a broad level. That it would be very difficult to prioritize a particular country or a particular area although many people in responding to the survey did suggest that other areas might be important as well, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and other areas that may not have been represented in our survey. So we're very encouraged, I think, by this response that this material is an area that we should be prioritizing. So this is something that we will be undertaking further exploration and work with the Law Library Microfilm Consortium to integrate into our workflow for digitization. And the material that that LLMC is not able to host because of their approach to copyright, CRL will certainly also take it on and make it accessible through our online servers as well. Just to wrap this up, some of the other areas that the law partnership has been taking on, the focus on the international content was deemed a priority by our advisory committee. And again, I want to thank everyone who's given us input on the kinds of materials. What we've been supporting and supplying, both from CRL and from CRL member institutions, have been materials related to the historical legal documentation of Africa, of South Asia, of Latin America, and other regions. LLMC has a long-term project to identify and digitize the holdings of former British colonial countries. They did an extensive bibliography called the Common Law Abroad that identified the holdings of this content in the major law libraries around the country. And so they've been taking the same approach towards the digitization, working on both the countries of common law and identifying the holdings in the major libraries that have that material, almost all of which are CRL members. So it's been a good work to work with them on the identification and digitization of this material. We'd look to move, of course, beyond just the English-speaking laws and move into Francophone countries. And that is something that is in our priority list to pursue over the next 2 years with the LLMC, especially as they begin to complete some of the materials that's held by some of the partner libraries. Other materials in our queue and identified as we encounter them with LLMC are materials, government publications from South Asia, Southeast Asia, Russia, and particularly pre-Soviet Russia as an area of interest, Latin America and other regions. A lot of this material comes up when scholars are interested or requested, or when we've identified unique holdings. So if there are particular areas or holdings that you're interested in representing, we're always interested in getting those into the queue as well. But we certainly have plenty of content to draw from as we can get it. And then we're also supporting some of the special efforts that LLMC is undertaking, working towards the digitization of the comprehensive record of a particular country. They did this in Haiti in response to the recent troubles there and the earthquake, by making the government materials held by United States organizations freely available on the web, so that the Haitian government, the Haitian community could access that material as well. They're also pursuing this now with Cuba, and they've been drawing from the rich collections of both the University of Florida as well as the University of Michigan in supplying that content. As they continue to identify sources and titles, they've been pursuing that, and this is an ongoing collection. So if your collection is particularly rich, by all means, do get in touch with us. I see our time is nearly up here, so I wanted to make sure to get a couple minutes left here for questions and answers. Make sure we've picked up all of the questions that we've got. So if you're on a telephone or on a headset with a microphone and you want to talk, please raise your hand. We do have a question about some of the this is a follow-up to some of the state level information. And the question was, have you been in contact with state archives and state libraries? These are the best folks to work with in terms of access to collections for digitization, as well as getting permissions to scan. We've had some discussions around this. We haven't approached the state archives and libraries directly with this, but we had some conversations with our legal advisors on this. And they do routinely meet with the state libraries to look at the state of the digitization. So we've kind of, I guess, worked through intermediaries with this, but we haven't approached them directly.
Work with some state law library, or some urban law libraries, like the Los Angeles County Law Library, New York State Law Library,
right.
Not with the state libraries and archives themselves. But I think that's good information to have. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for that suggestion. I think that's useful. So we have a question. Yes, this is a good question. One area of collecting I'm quoting, mind you. One area of collecting, quote, born digital content might be political websites, the websites of governments in power or the leaders in power, or the scanning of the publication that these parties release to their public. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great comment and observation. In fact, this is an area that. The foreign official gazettes are but one part of that, but that's part of the record that we're seeking to capture. These, of course, are born in the print world, and in some cases now they're being published to the web via the various offices that put them out. Broadly speaking, though, yeah, the preservation of the web locations of that material is, especially in the areas of the world in conflict or with unstable regimes or corrupt regimes, a lot of that content is missing. And this is a discussion that we've had with our area studies teams, that is the area materials projects, especially in light of the Leviathan agenda, which has tended to be focused on our own government information. We've had long discussions with them about the nature of government documentation in the countries of interest, and by and large, the material that's up on the web is very unstable. It's prone to disappear, especially when a regime changes, with no preservation backup, unlike the attempts, in North America, or to do the same when governments transition. Furthermore, when material is produced electronically and collected by libraries, it tends to come out in CD-ROM or as an insert to the printed publication, and usually the software is incompatible, the data is corrupt, something happens where that material is not accessible for long, if it's accessible at all. So libraries have really focused a lot on the print, but looking at the websites and harvesting that material is an area of interest. And there have been a couple of initial efforts to look at that type of material. CRL has been kind of keeping tabs on this, but has not really developed a web archive strategy on its own. In part because we're not entirely convinced that the tools are best suited to the kind of research questions that our researchers are asking. But the two of the other projects that I have known. The University of Texas at Austin has been working on Latin American government documents, harvesting both the traditional serial publications that were formerly offered in print and now offered perhaps as PDFs. They've been harvesting those materials, as well as looking at more of the bucket approach of scooping up entire sites that relate to that kind of material. And that project has been going on for some years, and it seems to be pretty successful. University of California, Berkeley has done a lot of capturing of websites as well for government information, and that's a really important thing. On a small pilot project, are the Africana librarians who are, in fact, meeting, I believe, today in Illinois, have been talking about capturing government websites for countries in conflict. And so they're piloting and looking at the the difficulties of capturing the right kinds of materials and looking at it, we can do that at a broader scale.
Back to the USA, we did have a question that someone asked about the municipal or city government documents, and I think that we have not done anything with municipal or city government documents. It's not an area that CRL has much a history in, but just the fact that there's a huge need there just indicates the scale of the challenge that we're facing. We, as you heard from James's presentation, we're doing a lot, a fair amount, but it's not covering the whole waterfront. We would like to cover more of the waterfront, and to do that, we need more participation in CRL. So we appreciate your institution's support for CRL. This is the only thing that's your institution support for CRL is what's enabling CRL to do what it's been able to do, and leveraging that support, we've been able to get a lot of funding from foundations, Carnegie Corporation, Mellon Foundation, and other MacArthur Foundation and others. We're determined to do more, and we would love your help. If you probably know a colleague, you probably have colleagues that are in other major institutions that are not CRL libraries. If those libraries would join and participate in this, we could do a lot more. And I think we have an imperative to do more, given the losses that we're seeing and the threats that we're seeing to the integrity of government information.
If you can believe it, 3 hours have passed, and we're forced to conclude. Want to turn this over to Virginia Kerr?
Thanks, James. Thanks to our presenters today, Stephen Bosch, James Simon, and Bernie Reilly. And thanks to all of you for participating in the presentations this afternoon. I'd like to just remind you of upcoming CRL events. We have our semi-annual General Collections and Services webinar coming up very soon. That's a good introduction for staff and a good refresher. We anticipate having another in our series of text and data mining webinars this summer in July. Look for more information on that. And we do want to remind you that next year's annual council meeting and collections forum will be in April 2016. It will be here in Chicago. So that will be an on-site meeting, and look for more information on that as well. If we could have the next slide. We do appreciate your feedback. It's very important for our program planning. So we encourage you to fill out the brief survey that you'll find when you log out today. And to stay in touch with CRL and to read more about the programs and initiatives that were discussed today, you can find all this, you can find the information on our recently redesigned website. And be sure to subscribe to Connect, our electronic newsletter, as well as following CRL on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you so much. This presentation is being recorded. It will be available on CRL's YouTube channel shortly, along with other presentations from CRL. Thank you and have a good day.
Thanks, everyone. See you next year.